Welcome to Blamestorming. Blamestorming. In a post-truth world, there's plenty of blame to go around. Plenty of blame to go around. Plenty of blame to go around. Join Dave Cyrus and Marissa Smith as they blamestorm about today's hot topics.
Hey guys, welcome back to Blamestorming. I'm still Marissa Smith. I've got Dave Cyrus with me.
Yes, she does.
I've got Heather Height with me.
Heather Height.
I'm still here.
And I've got Caitlin Bailey with me.
Present and accounted for.
So
we
good
are
news.
all here, you guys.
Oh, sorry. Good news, everybody. I found the name of the movie.
What is it?
It's called Kinjite, Forbidden Subjects. And it's Charles Bronson's movie from, by the way, 1989, which made me even more disappointed in this movie because this is long after they should have known better.
So it's like competing with Die Hard?
Yeah, this came out around the same time. Bronson plays a cop. I found apparently Nicole Eggert is in it. That poor girl. So she hasn't gone through enough. And there's a guy named Sam Chu.
So this is at the peak of Japan coming in and killing Detroit, basically.
Yeah.
This is when we were basically like,
Basically.
we need to figure out a way of hating these people because they're taking all our jobs. And everyone was just so terrified of Japanese-made electronics. Which, by the way, it just goes to show the whole problem people have with like steel tariffs now is they think that it's so simple that you can just make more money when you tax something. They think of just like in the 80s, we were obsessed with this idea that the Japanese were selling us all these electronics, not acknowledging the fact that every time a ship came over filled with radios that they sold to us, we sent that ship back with all the stuff that we had that they needed, like our fruits, vegetables, and tuna.
And the things to make the radios.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, they weren't even eating tuna. The Japanese did not eat tuna until we started selling it to them. That's how much people didn't understand the way trade was actually working back then. Like from World War II ending onward.
Wait, so how do they have sushi grade tuna then?
Because they didn't eat sushi before World War II was almost exclusively small fish, which of course is the most environmental way to eat sushi or eat fish at all. And we convinced them to start eating tuna, which up until then was considered too fatty and oily.
It's delicious.
It
It
is
is
yummy.
really yummy.
It is.
But
It-
we're just
You know
backing
why?
up.
You know why it's
like
delicious?
A spicy
Because
tuna roll right now.
it's delicious because we don't agree with them when they said, "Oh, it's way too fatty,"
thing you're
and we're
gonna
like,
tell
"That
me.
doesn't exist."
Too fatty.
Anyway,
Plus a tuna could feed an entire village.
I want all of our listener to listen to
So-
watch Kinjite.
No, please don't.
We have a question from our live feed. LF would like to know what are the possible long-term outcomes if the bill is not passed.
What sex workers are advocating for now is decriminalization. That's what they want is for to stop putting people in jail for consensual sex work. This bill is a step in the other direction where we can further criminalize sex work, where it won't just be a municipal what's it called? Like low level crime. What's the word I'm looking like when you get a speeding? Yeah, misdemeanor. It's like like a speeding ticket. So right now in most municipalities, just straight consensual adult sex work is a misdemeanor, but they've been tacking on stuff like trafficking. If you like work with other people or ever use the internet, or if you tour yourself, then you can traffic yourself. If you are based in New York and travel to Boston one weekend,
Which is sort of a perversion of the intention of the law.
it's definitely a perversion of the intention of the law. So decriminalization solves a lot of that because
Plus,
it doesn't.
let's talk about the long term of that is
Yeah.
then the only thing that is illegal is underage
Yes.
trafficking
or
of
violent
children
exploitation, or
and-
lying
yeah.
to your employees,
So-
or like violating labor laws.
Right, but still, like legalizing it, it's still not going to stop children from being trafficked. But also going back to the bill, and I understand that there's a lot of speculation of where this will go once we kick the can down the road. But from what they're specifically saying right now is that this bill will close a loophole that trafficked people can now hold accountable the sites and the platforms that allowed them to be trafficked. So long term, if this bill does not get passed, sites like Backpage or
Backpage no longer exists.
well, I said
Sure.
like
Yeah,
back page, or a Craigslist, or sites that are allowing these ads to be posted will never have to face any sort of criminal liability or civil liability for allowing these ads to be posted in the first place. And so families of trafficked people themselves will not be able to hold these platforms accountable. So long term, if that's not passed, you're not going to be able to sue these sites for saying that they allowed these children be trafficked on their websites.
Right. The other way is like if you have a website, like if you have a blog or you have something, you won't be held personally liable for what other people post on your site.
But wait, 20 years ago, people were getting prostitutes from the backs of magazines, right?
Mhm.
Or
Right.
newspapers. Were they getting sued?
No.
Were there children there too? There had to be, right?
Absolutely.
Same percentage, I'm imagining.
Right.
I
Same
mean-
thing with street walking. Are we holding sidewalks accountable? Like, where does this go?
Well, I mean,
Or the places, the business that the sidewalks are in front of.
Right. Yeah, they should do a better job of keeping vagrants off their sidewalks.
Well, I mean,
because that could allow for child prostitution. So you've got to really crack down on your loitering laws.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's actually like casinos have prostitution.
Right.
problems,
Casinos actually
casinos get like, do they get sued if someone?
Casinos really crack down on prostitution, and they also weirdly crack down on marijuana consumption because it's still a federal law, and they don't want to put their gaming license. Their gaming license
Oh.
is like the big thing. So because they're already doing this thing that comes with a lot of like crackdown.
So LF has
Yeah.
a reply. Maybe there'd be more sex workers being hired if it was legal. That could be problematic for the image of America. Possible downsides of criminalizing.
So
One
it's-
of the best countries in the world is Holland.
That's
right?
true.
Everybody loves Holland.
Yeah.
It's not like people think of Holland as a low class country.
No.
England, it's legal, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it-
Yeah.
it's
Same thing with New
regulated.
Zealand. New Zealand, it's decriminalized.
Yeah, and those are all countries that
Those
we
are like-
all respect more than
Those are
ours.
top
Right.
3. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we're respecting like anything. Papua New Guinea more than we respect
Yeah,
ourselves.
but Holland and England are
And
still.
they
What
still
is
eat
the image
people
of
there.
America
I feel
anyway?
like
Aren't we
prostitution and
horrible?
abortion are sort of like equivalents, and that like criminalizing abortion doesn't really reduce the amount of abortion. It just makes
Makes it more
less
dangerous.
safe.
Yeah.
That's my argument with this bill, is that like cracking down on the ways that sex workers like find clients and keep themselves safe and stay in touch with each other and check in with each other might temporarily reduce the number of sex workers. It's going to make street walking way more visible. It's going to make like the vice like more public in
which,
the way.
Which the difference
Right.
is then it's actually
Now
then the
it's-
people who don't want it in
Now
there,
it's an image.
now you
issue.
are seeing it. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think we all agree it's bad. I mean, yeah, so the Deuce.
Yeah, no, people. Yeah,
Right.
people
Yeah.
walking around on the street in like that doesn't help property values anywhere.
Right.
You know? Like
No.
But like in the
neighborhoods
Deuce,
want to crack down on it.
the Deuce is
Yeah.
all about when prostitution moved from Times Square on the street to like
Yep.
the massage parlors, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, it doesn't fix the prostitution problem, but it was incremental. It meant
Helps
that,
moms feel safer.
but the whole point was that it meant, yeah, you weren't walking
Mhm.
around the street seeing a movie and your kids seeing a hooker,
Right.
And it's and then it's harder to murder a hooker in a
massage
yeah,
parlor
yeah.
when she can call for help and you had to like go through a door person. Like this is basically going to reduce indoor sex work and increase outdoor sex work, with which all people, whether they're neighborhood watchmen or prostitutes themselves, don't want.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think you're also kind of making the assumption that prostitutes aren't being killed that are doing indoor sex work. Like there's that whole Gilgo Beach serial killer that had basically hired all of those women online, and they found like a dozen or so bodies from them. Then their last phone calls were like, "Oh yeah, no, I met this guy on Craigslist." So I don't. Again,
Were they hookers?
At the same
Yeah.
time,
Or
though,
were
if
they-
tobacco were illegal, there would be a body count of people killed over selling tobacco illegally.
Right.
Anything that
Oh,
people
so like
want.
Eric Gardner?
Same thing with prohibition. Yeah,
Well,
Eric Gardner is a. I mean,
I don't
yeah,
think
it's
that
like
was
when
really
you
about the
criminalize
cigarette.
something.
That wasn't really about. It wasn't really about the cigarette itself. That was. I think there
It's
was
about
more.
cracking down on marginalized people, and uppity, mouthy women have been that for a long time. You know, so like I think that this is a thin veil to crack down on like women's sexuality, which has been an obsession of civilizations for thousands and thousands of years now.
But I don't understand why a women's sexuality is based on sex work. Like you
Why
can
is sex work
still
criminalized
have.
if not for fear of women's sexuality?
Well, I think
it's more of a morality thing. I mean, it's not like male sex work is legal and female sex work is not. I mean, there's still male hustlers out there. It's not any less illegal than female sex workers.
But being a male
Yeah,
hustler
but
is a
men
much...
are allowed to show their nipples on Facebook.
but it's important to remember
The
that...
ones that are showing it, you don't want to see anyway.
Never.
But being a male hustler, being a male prostitute, it is a much smaller industry. There's a much smaller profit margin. Guys are expected to work more in a day. We have to, the amount of sorry.
It's one of the few places where women earn more than men.
Yes, so that is why we really need to do something about it.
It's really hard for you to make money.
So is
these
this
days,
because
isn't
of
it?
the wage gap
You have
between
no
male
idea.
and female prostitutes?
You
Is
have
that
no
what it
idea
is?
how much more I'm expected to work out as a male prostitute than a woman.
You have to be in much
Cry me
better
a
shape,
river.
right?
Well, there is an alt-right argument about porn where porn is the one industry where women make more money. And they're like, see, that means it's okay.
It is totally okay.
That's a good point.
Immoral according to whom exactly? Well, I'm talking about like basically Judeo-Christian ethics. That's the reason why people.
You weren't
Mary
talking about your
Magdalene.
personal morals. You
Heather's-
were
No,
just-
I've
Yeah.
already said that.
That's
I
my
thought
husband.
that
Heather's
that-
husband just wait, this should clue people in. Heather's husband just made the point on in a comment that immoral according to whom, and because it's your husband, I'm going to give this a lot of weight because that means because he speaks for both of you. So that
Thanks.
but yeah, it is a good point that I think I see both your points because it's a roundabout thing. People who are saying I don't want prostitution, they're not actively saying because I don't want women to, enjoy their bodies.
Orgasms.
But there is a
And make
correlation
money.
down the line of that people have a hatred of prostitution for the similar kind of reason they hate the idea that they find out that teenagers are having sex in cars or
Right.
that people can get I think the same people who really
Yeah,
hate
but at the
prostitution
same
hate the
time,
HPV
like, there's-
vaccine.
I don't know, and I guess like feminism is hard, you guys, because like I understand,
I know.
like you know what I mean. So like I understand like that sex workers are a marginalized group. I completely understand that. At the same time, it's like, well, something like I'd like to be able to walk down the street without being profiled. That's illegal for them to do that, but it still happens to me.
Sure.
Why do I care that it's inconvenient for you to get a John? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like it's not my own personal issue. And so it's kind of like, going back into identity politics.
Well,
It's
that's
just
what
like,
people in power want, though. They want for you to say that it's a choice between, like, a veteran having a job and a homeless person having food stamps, or that it's a choice between you being profiled and a prostitute being arrested. That's sort of that's a divide and conquer argument.
Right.
That the idea that if one group gets advocacy, it's taken from another. And
it's like one of those things where I don't see it as being detrimental to my sexuality as a woman. I don't see that argument. I also don't see the argument of putting a child's safety before. I don't see that either. So Dave is saying all of which boils down to the same goofy Judeo-Christian Islamic mindset
Right.
that women are property.
And that's that is a valid point. Not everyone who's against prostitution thinks of it that way, but that is a cornerstone of this argument that we need to legislate sex.
Well,
right?
I've already said that I think that sex work should be legal and that it should be highly taxed. But for me, it's not so much like, I think that people are going to do it much like doing drugs or alcohol or whatever, and like any sort of luxury, there should be a high tax on it. That's just my feeling, and you can use.
But you're
that.
imagining this tax being paid by Johns or by clients that you're imagining being like wealthy, and I think that it's important to remember that when you talk about like heavily taxing this industry, you're talking about heavily taxing like a population of people that might be doing survival sex work. That might it's the providers that are going to be paying that.
Well, I think it should be both. I think that
Should charge it like a sales tax.
exactly. I think
Yeah.
that it should be like a sales tax, like if you're going to a spa or something like that.
we can-
and then also an income tax because, like, if you're filling out your, your W-9s.
Oh,
or
if I'm
Sure.
I think prostitution should be like being a writer. I write everything off.
Freelance.
That you shouldn't
Yeah.
be paid for it?
I'm that I shouldn't that I
Because
should
no one
be able
gets
to
paid to write.
Right.
Oh yeah, well that's why
That's funny.
I make more money in my tax return than I do all year long because
Right.
I write everything off because I
Yeah,
file
there
as a
you go.
writer.
I
So-
well,
I
like
wanna
Brazilian
see-
wax is sure.
I want to see a future where adults are allowed to have the kinds of sex they want for reasons that they want. And I don't think that people should be going to jail for the kinds of sex that they're having or the reasons that they're having that sex.
I think that the rather than thinking of it as something that would I would like people to not profile me when I walk down the street. I feel like the idea of us being grown up enough as a country to not imprison people for sex would kind of embrace the idea of not assuming somebody is a certain thing because they're black or white or whatever,
But
I
are the
think it
same
all
people
kind
that
of
still go to
is
jail
the
for
same.
weed, and
Yeah.
so
I
you
know,
know,
But we're
so
but hope we are getting.
I feel like all
closer
of that
to the
is
point where that's
kind of
over.
part
then
of
what
that.
happens to all the people that were in jail for weed? So
Oh.
what happens to them?
They gotta get
They
out.
would be commuted.
Actually,
They would
they
have
would
sentences
they would
commuted.
they would let
But
them out the weed thing.
there
That's not what's
that's
happening.
not
They're
what's happening.
supposed to be, yeah, but yeah,
They're
you're
not
right.
doing
Yeah,
that.
because the criminal justice system is another example of the stated purpose and the actual purpose being radically different, right?
Yeah.
So the stated purpose is that we're going to get dangerous people off the street, right? So the SESTA bill is we're going to help save children that would otherwise be trafficked into sex slavery, and we're going to prevent that from happening with this bill, right? Just like the criminal justice system is like we're going to get the bad guys off the street. But in actuality, the line between good and bad and putting people in cages with violence doesn't make things fucking better. And you have entire populations that are living in a police state right now because of our wrong thinking about this issue. So I think this is another the stated intentions might be good unless you think about it and then you talk about the actual implications of this law, and it's going to make life less safe for adult sex workers. It's not going to prevent child trafficking, and it feels like the beginnings of making the internet.
But we also don't know that it's not going to prevent child trafficking.
How is it going to prevent child trafficking?
We haven't tried it yet, so
Well,
we
can I-
don't
But we've tried
necessarily
stuff
know
like this
that it
before.
has. Like
This is-
we don't at this particular moment in time. We have not done this yet. This bill has not been passed yet, so we don't know if it will incrementally or at all
I don't
change
even
anything.
know that it's possible to prevent crime on the whole. Things
Specifically, crime without a complainant.
yeah.
Like theft is a pretty easy thing for the government to deal with. We don't have a major theft problem in the country because every time someone gets robbed, there's
They
someone
report
going to
it.
the police and saying, "Please help me with this."
Unless
this is-
they're
very
an
clearly-
undocumented immigrant or
right, but this is
otherwise.
like a missing child that probably
a really good way to find them would be to go to those ads.
Right.
what do you think
but like
we've got
why
runaways?
so now why is it that prostitution is illegal but pornography is legal?
That's a really
Right?
good
Isn't that
question.
a great question?
Why
as long
is
as
it
you have a camera,
why is it illegal
you
to
can totally
sell
get
something you
paid
can
to
give away
fuck.
for free?
Yeah.
Because you're not having sex for money. You're getting filmed
Which
for
makes
money.
me feel ew
Is
and
the-
gross and yucky feelings, and I don't like it. So let's crack down on it and put people in jail. The other thing that I'll say about trafficking victims is a lot of the rescue industry and a lot of this we're gonna help trafficking victims starts with arresting them and putting them in a cage, which
Right.
isn't the best move for helping victims
because then
of
they're
trauma.
afraid to go for help.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, there was that woman, Yang Sung, who was working in a massage parlor. She was 39 years old. She was an immigrant from China. And her massage parlor got raided by the NYPD in Flushing, Queens. And then she was raped by the police officer. And the reason that we know that is because she told her immigration attorney and her mother about it. And then they tried to get her to be an informant, but she wouldn't do it. So they raided her massage parlor again 2 weeks later, and she leapt from a 4-story building in order to get away from the NYPD, because the last time she didn't run away from them, she got violently raped. So like these are not social workers, right? The police are not caregivers. They're not great with people in trauma. So like to make them the front lines for this war against supposed exploitation or this war against violence, it's just not a good move. Like telling the police are not great at not traumatizing people.
It's just like people who pedophiles wouldn't really be apt to go for help in counseling, or maybe not even admit it, because there's no help for a pedophile. There's just, oh, you're a fucking pedophile. Now you're a criminal. I'm going to put you on a list, and you're going to be, like the moment that you
Well, they
fuck
can't
up,
be
you can't.
rehabilitated.
I think that they can't be rehabilitated, but there are support groups run by pedophiles who don't act on their feelings.
Depo-Provera has been shown to be effective.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They can white knuckle it. I'm just saying, if you are a pedophile who managed to not hurt anyone, I feel like you should be treated a lot better than
With more
you
But
should
I
be treated
understand
like
why you wouldn't want to come out.
The one.
'cause it means you were probably abused
saw a
yourself and you chose not to continue
I saw a
doing it.
documentary,
I
and
feel
there
bad
was
for
an
that.
interview with a man who ran a support group online for pedophiles who do not act on their feelings, and he looked like a pedophile. It was crazy,
Right.
Because he was.
It must be like some kind of
Straight out of Central Casting.
like I don't want to.
Just
I don't want to
sweaty and
like
uncomfortable.
But no, he really
I
did.
would
He
totally
looked like a
shame the fuck
1970s.
out of a pedophile. I don't care.
Like,
Trust me, I know people who look more like a pedophile than he did. Without doing it, because I mean, I'm a comic and I know a lot of guys who
Right.
you would never leave alone with anyone. But I just wanted to say,
With anyone.
have you guys seen that MSNBC documentary series about trafficking? The reason I don't trust this bill is because it just makes me think so much of that series. Because me and my ex-girlfriend would watch it all the time because it was always the same problem with the show. Every time the investigators would say, "We're going to go rescue women from trafficking,"
Yep.
and every time they would arrest a woman, and the woman would say, "I got 2 kids at home. I need to do this to save them. I need
I'm
to help them."
choosing to do this because it's the best out of some bad options.
And every
Yeah.
single episode, the investigator would say, "Okay, this time they won't traffic, but we're gonna keep. We're still gonna make her go to jail.
If they find
but next
one-
time, and then they have a
Yeah.
woman. And then the one we saw that like really blew our minds was they found this like 4'10" woman who I would have guessed is
Adult.
maybe 50,
Right.
And they blurred her face
but
because
you
they
can see
said
her old neck.
yeah, and they would say, "Well, she's clearly a child. We finally found the child being trafficked."
physically
And then they get to the point and they arrest her and say, "All right, we're going to check her ID. All right, we're about to check her ID and credits." And they didn't have to blur her face. They blurred her. They said we're blurring her face because she might be a child. But when they found out she wasn't a child, they did not unblur her face because that's bad TV.
yeah.
I swear to God, so again, I would have more faith in our lawmakers' good intent on this bill if we didn't have so many stories of this concept of trafficking being stretched to its absolute limit in order to punish adult people for having consensual sex with each other.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think that our justice system in any way, shape, or form is
Working.
on any level. But at the same time, I feel like these are the ebbs and flows of our society, and these are the ebbs and flows of our law. And when in the 80s and the 90s, when you had just super predators, you went and you rounded up people that were probably nonviolent,
Yep.
had their lives ruined, went to jail until society started trying to revisit everything. This is your turn.
That was also a time
Yeah,
of
but
much higher
this isn't
crime.
the first time in history that prostitutes have been scapegoated. We have so many examples of that, and we already know how this book
This
ends.
is not the first time in history that people of color, women,
Yeah.
anyone has been
Satanists.
scapegoated.
Right.
Like,
So,
you
like,
know,
what- so-
you know, it's again, this is the ebbs and flow of society. Like everyone kind of goes through their time, and this
I just
is
would
just
rather
that
have
time.
you just reminded me of all the people who were put during the Satanic Panic in prison for like ritual abuse who didn't do
Never
it.
did it.
Right, it was
And
a
are
panic,
now
a
getting
made-up-
out of prison.
Yeah.
I would rather just skip that whole throwing them in prison part.
We did it to
and-
Satanists. Now we're doing it to juggalos.
Well, not even Satanists, the juggalos.
we are.
You did-
We are
you did it to
demonizing
people
juggalos
who-
The
for
juggalos
no
were
did
reason.
that
not
to themselves by
Satanists.
coming out against Trump.
And
I mean, I'm not defending being a juggalo, but they
I'll
don't
do
deserve
that.
to go to
Are we-
jail.
are we throwing juggalos in jail?
Yes!
I
The
didn't know
juggalos are a
that.
gang now. People getting their kids
Oh,
taken away for
that's
being
right.
juggalos
They do
because
kinda
they
act
thought that it's
like-
a freaking gang when they're
Wow,
really just a bunch of
Juggalo,
lonely
MS-13.
people in
They're
makeup.
just part
Same
of a
diff.
family, man. Don't they understand?
It's family.
Performance
It is
art.
family.
It's a
They're just
family.
people yelling, "Show us your butthole," and they're being thrown in with MS-13ers. Who,
Yeah,
by the way,
they're not gonna-
there's like 14 MS-13 members.
13,
So
14.
yeah, there's like the number of MS-13 members compared to like the Crips is infinitesimal, but
They must have done
It's
some.
the fact that they're El Salvadorian that Trump was like, oh, this will really scare the shit out of them. People are
Right,
used to
because he
Bloods.
can deport them.
Yeah, because people are used to Bloods, but
well, now the
ooh, a
Bloods
gang member that
are,
are also
they've
illegal
grown
aliens.
up. They wear suits now.
But
You
like
know?
they had the Latin Kings before, and they were also
A lot of them were born here. That's the problem. The Latin Kings, some of them are second generation. No, that's why they're not as attractive enough as an enemy because Trump wanted a 2-in-1. He wanted
Right.
illegal aliens who are also
Right,
gang
it's like
members.
the reason we made that marijuana illegal, the reason that we made acid illegal. It's like all about targeting other populations.
Yeah. Alcohol was illegal because we were sick of the Irish and Italians enjoying themselves too much.
Right.
Then the jazz men came in, and the Mexicans and the blacks were smoking weed, so let's
Right.
get rid of that too. And now,
And it's also about repressing social movements.
yeah, I mean, could you imagine what the Juggalos would be dealing with if they were mostly black people? I mean, think
I
of it.
can't
We treat them like that, and they're
even,
white. My God.
Yeah, but just barely.
Yeah.
You
what-
know.
Oh, yes. On certain levels, yes, Juggalos barely count as white people because on the intangible level, what it means to be white in terms of having money and power and
They don't have
stability,
any of that.
they don't have that.
None of that.
But that's why they're a
That's why they meet
family.
in fields.
That's why they need family. That's why they're actually very
I'm gonna
nice
make
people.
a confession, you guys. I did date one in college.
They're
I
nice
did.
people.
Did he make you come real hard?
No.
Then fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Or don't.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You know what? People think but the thing about Juggalos, it's honestly, it's the same people who in the 90s were just going to become, just sort of over the top punks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just usually people who just didn't have a lot of popularity and they wanted to just have their own community. Punks, scary punks, were the nicest people I
Yeah.
ever met in high school.
Oh, I have.
They
course.
they're always the least aggressive people. We just have this image of them.
Right.
And Juggalos are actually in their defense, a lot of them don't like the Insane Clown Posse. Those are what I call the good Juggalos.
But that happens so often. I think it's like this is what discrimination looks like, is that we allow the story that we tell ourselves about something to get in the way of what it actually is. Right? And so we've told ourselves the story about what sex trafficking looks like, and we've completely missed what sex trafficking actually looks like.
Right,
It looks
because
like
you are a
economic
child.
necessity.
Well, I
You
think
are a
also
child
there's
prostitute.
Yeah.
You
There's
are.
a-
Technically.
You
There's
are.
a problem with increasing the gray area of things rather than narrowing things down, too. You know.
Right, especially when you have language in the SESTA bill cracking down on promoting prostitution. What does that mean? Does that mean that my podcast is illegal now? Because I don't talk about it as a pejorative?
Well, someone would have to listen to it and report it first.
Fuck you.
I didn't even catch on to
An
that.
audience of one. Call the police. These whores are mouthy.
His horse are mouthy.
Is that what you call your what's your podcast called?
The oldest profession
It should-
podcast.
It should really be Mouthy
These
Whores.
mouthy whores.
Mouthy horse would be a great.
You would have
podcast.
so many more iTunes.
You don't know our numbers. We have more than 4 listeners.
I can estimate that you would have a lot more votes on.
Mouthy whores.
You'd have more reviews at the very least for Mouthy Whores. I kind of want to call this that now.
Mouthy horrors.
I mean, I was never really married to
I don't think
Blamestorming.
Marissa's happy with that.
Do you know how much work I did on the art? Fuck you, Dave.
Yes.
Sounds like
It's
you're doing all the
brainstorming.
work and giving this white dude credit.
That's
That
the deal we
seems-
have.
Jesus.
That is the deal. I show up and
I
talk.
don't think Marissa's given him anything. She hasn't given him credit, nor has she taken authority through his permission.
No, I kind of do my own thing, and I send him, "Hey, this is what I did." Yeah, I still think that we still haven't really covered the why of why is it that you have sex on camera and that's legal, but prostitution is not.
I don't.
It's a
You know,
speech
I just
legal
hope it stays
argument.
that way.
Speech.
The legal argument is that it's 2 actors, right? So because both performers are being paid and they're both actors. So if
Okay.
you have whereas if one person is paying another professional, you only have one professional in the room, kind of thing.
But if you were to record your session and then just give him half the money as the cops walked in, then it's a porn.
Right.
Technically,
Well,
yeah.
it doesn't even have to be that. It could be the guy having sex could also be the producer and paying only the woman, and that's still technically just porn as long as he's recording it and there's a
I
contract.
don't even think that legally the camera has to be on.
I think it does.
Does it?
I think legally there's other stuff. There's got to be. I don't know the specifics of it, but I
Yeah.
mean, like,
You have
in
to
the way
have
that
certain license.
Yeah.
Certain.
We don't have a
contracts.
license
Certain
to-
contracts. I meant.
Yeah,
You
like
would
the
have-
paperwork. As long as you sign the
Sign the paperwork.
paperwork beforehand, then I guess
could you imagine
So
that
it
is
just
like
seems like you just need a legal Zoom for prostitutes to just be like, oh, cops are coming now. This is
Yeah,
this
as
is
long
a
as you-
porno.
But of course, as we know from like all marginalized populations, like what the law says and what the cops do are two very different things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of our porn doesn't have sex in it.
The-
anyway,
I'm more
so-
worried. This is the kind of bill that's not going to result in like more police raiding. Like that's not the big fear. The big fear is that it has a chilling effect on platforms and that sex workers aren't able to connect with each other and keep each other safe, or connect or
Well,
communicate
it's the
in
oldest
any way.
profession. I'm sure there'll be some sort of underground railroad of
It
prostitution.
can't be the oldest one. There's
No,
gotta be.
hunting predates us as a species.
I'm
but
sure
yeah,
people were
gathering, maybe.
maybe, maybe.
collecting sticks. Maybe. I mean,
So-
well, technically though, she's right. It is the oldest profession because it probably predates humans.
It does predate humans.
Because like monkeys will like
Penguins
trade,
also.
will trade like food for sex.
Yep, absolutely.
There was a
Did you say penguins? Also?
Penguins, yeah, penguins.
yeah. That's been observed. Yes.
Yeah. There's a cool female penguin behavior where if like their mate takes too long because they might like be dead in the water because the wild is hard.
Yeah.
They'll like flirt with neighboring male penguins to get nesting stones, and if their mate shows up, then they'll pretend that wasn't happening.
Oh.
And if their mate doesn't show up, then they will sometimes steal a male from a neighboring nest. And then my favorite is like you've got prostitute penguins, and then you also have stripper penguins, right? So you've got penguins that will let a male copulate with them by giving them a stone. And sometimes you have penguins just doing like teasing dances,
Just
and
to
they'll
get
get the
stones?
stone, and then they'll be like, "Fuck you!" I mean, like it's great. It's like it's a pretty broad spectrum of like female coping
That's
mechanisms.
really interesting.
Yeah,
I never knew that.
Just more behavior that Republicans want to stop penguins from engaging in.
Yeah.
Remember how mad? I mean, they were so mad when we
They're
found the
going to
gay
pull down
penguin.
Gay
all those
penguins.
penguin sites.
Well, I mean, because Republicans need to believe that homosexuality doesn't exist in animals, even though it's in every goddamn animal.
Yep.
Just because it, violates their whole belief system
Just
that
gives
it's.
them tingles in a
unnatural.
weird place. They
Yeah.
just can't admit to it.
I don't like it.
It's like, oh, why'd this man make my penis hard?
Well, I don't know if you know this. When the gay penguins in the zoo in Central Park, one of them went back to women, and Republicans were so happy about this.
Why? There's just so
Wait, did Pence put 'em in a
involved
camp?
Like they,
the ins and outs of penguin relationships.
yeah, they were very involved in this relationship.
As
I mean,
the
it was like
penguin turns.
they really thought that the penguin that went back to women was then going to start proselytizing to the gay penguins about how he was converted.
Really?
I mean, that's how they acted. I don't think they really.
Give them a little penguin Bible.
That if they had their way, yes, that's exactly what they would have done.
little penguin
They would
white
make
shirt. With
they
a
would
little
make the gay
penguin pencil
penguins
protector,
watch straight penguin sex.
little penguin bicycle.
So, Heather, are there any like laws coming down the pike that are going to restrict pornography more?
The things that restrict pornography don't really affect our job because we don't do a lot of sex or fluid exchange.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you were like, because we don't do laws.
we don't do legal. No. But like in California, they have the condom law.
Right.
We're not in California, so
Right.
But I think that they were thinking of having it be like if your porn does not depict a condom in the video, it is illegal.
Okay.
But then it would be illegal to distribute in California. Kind of like the California, all children's clothing has to have fire retardant on it because of California.
right.
They
They have a lot of laws with like you can't have certain metals and
it'll trickle into the rest of the country eventually. So that would be an issue as we grow as a production company.
Right.
Right. We started out with the fetish because that was what I was willing to do.
Right.
and we needed to start somewhere. Like, I'll model for free. I'm willing to beat people on film for you.
Great.
Right.
Maybe talk about my feet, whatever, but I'm not, I'm in my 40s. I'm not going to,
Right.
But now as he's expanding out, like this is basically his baby, he's gonna definitely want to have like real sex,
Right.
like
Right.
real porn.
Just no
And-
literal babies, because that's still definitely illegal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no
okay.
real babies.
Sure,
No,
got it, yeah.
baby isn't project.
Got it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're
that, because
welcome.
We wouldn't want to have that kind of.
Yeah,
you know,
you could be arrested for child porn just for
confusion.
using
Yeah,
the word
just-
baby
No!
in relation to porn. You know,
I can
Oh, no,
hear. I
they-
can feel my husband now.
That's something that happens a lot when it comes to child porn. A lot of times, the government is willing to pretend to be defending children when what they really want to do is just censor people in general for sex. There was a very big case years ago, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. The biggest case they ever had in terms of censorship of comic books was a horror comic that was only allowed to be sold to adults, that had, in one instance, it had a demon who was giving birth to a giant egg, and the egg hatched little new demons, adult demons, and that demon who hatched out of that egg then raped a man in hell. Okay? Do you know why that man went to jail for drawing that?
Because it was
A
technically
baby
a
demon?
baby demon.
Because even though it was a full grown, because even though the demon looked like a full grown adult, it did just hatch out of an egg that a bigger demon just gave birth to, making it, according to that courtroom, a baby.
did you guys
So
know
it's
that?
like
that
when
is
Ridley gets
And
all
demon
intimate with the
pedophile.
Ridley alien thing.
And that guy went to jail.
Speaking
for
of
drawing that.
promoting child sex, Romeo and Juliet is a fucking travesty
really a
of
hot
a
movie, though.
13-year-old
it's not
and a
hot.
17-year-old.
It was
getting
hot when
down.
when I was a kid.
Yeah,
How sexy was that when you were in high school and they showed it in class?
so hot,
Right?
But it's
Yeah, I
like,
was bored to death, but go on.
but it's
Side
crazy.
boob.
We're cracking down on comic books. We're cracking down on words on page.
But
I mean,
that's
like
art.
exactly.
Well, what is art? Now we're going to start a whole nother thing.
Sometimes people would just use an excuse to just attack what they don't like. I mean, remember what Giuliani did to museums 20 years ago?
Jesus.
When Giuliani, because a black woman was nude and portraying Jesus, that was considered obscenity. I mean, and he had a panel of people to decide what was obscenity. Not one of them had ever created art before.
Right.
We are so used to people exploiting one group to attack another.
Yep.
And that's what it feels like this is. This feels like it's about stopping prostitution by using the excuse that it's children, or the excuse that it's against their
Excuse
will.
that there may be a child.
And you know what?
Right.
If you were only going after those people, I would support it, but it doesn't look like that's what this is.
I don't think that they're saying that they're stopping prostitution in this bill. Like, prostitution's already illegal. Like, I just don't. I understand what you're
child
saying.
prostitution.
Right, but that's what they're trying to prevent. What
This-
they're saying is
yeah.
that they're trying to prevent the trafficking of children.
I don't see anything in this bill that I would imagine would prevent. This all seems like revenge. The ability to take revenge has been increased.
On sites that had the audacity to allow sex workers to communicate with each other on it.
So I think that
Don't forget, Backpage. The way I remember that story was legally, the legal reason they were able to shut down Backpage is because Backpage was asking for proof that the women weren't children, and they said, well, that means you know that they're prostitutes, because why else would you care that they're underage?
Yep.
It was such a
It's sort of like the
cynical
condom
test.
law. So there are a lot of, there are still people that are doing street-based sex work here in New York, and they are still being, if they carry condoms on them, that is still being used as evidence against them in a court of law. So they're actually disincentivizing sex workers from carrying condoms on them by
'cause
cracking
it's like
down-
contraband.
Yeah,
Because it's proving what your intention is.
right. Yeah.
It's intent. Yeah.
I had no idea about that. I feel like that's something I should have known.
And it seems like the kind of thing that the people who make those laws kind of grin and clink their glasses to, of like, haha, this'll get them.
So you say things like there've always been dead hookers, but it's like, no, our feelings about prostitutes, like the fact that the way that we crack down on them and the way that we like disincentivize them from being able to take care of their own personal safety are the result of choices that we've made as a society. There's nothing inevitable about the violence of sex work. That's a choice that we make, and it's a dumb one.
You know, the Roman Emperor Elagabalus
Oh God.
was a
Do
prostitute.
tell.
Elagabalus was a Roman emperor. You know Elagabalus. He was.
Who doesn't?
We
I
had
think
lunch
he was,
last week.
I think he died at like 21. Could have been murder, but he was a gay prostitute who would go as king, would go to the red light district or whatever of Rome
must have made
and
bank.
turn tricks because he just wanted, it's just what he wanted to do. He was thrilled by the idea. And actually, he was what we consider now maybe the first trans world leader because he offered a bunch of doctors in Rome money, all the king's riches, to give him a sex change.
Yep.
I'm not even sure I should be using him, but I mean,
I do not
technically
know
he's never
about
been
this
he's
person.
never
Gay is
identified.
safer, but yeah.
Fascinating.
But yeah, Elagabalus was
We've had many leaders that have had either current or a history of sex work. Empress Wu is an example of that. Empress Theodora is an example of that.
yeah, but those were women.
Elvita.
So
yeah, no. You're Elvita. No, never mind.
Evita.
Yeah, Evita. Elvita. I'm like
Elvita?
Elvira. What's happening?
Velveeta.
Yeah, no. Your example's cooler. It's edgier.
I
Yeah.
love that example.
And you know what? They killed Elagabalus, which is too bad because maybe he could have made the. Now, to be fair, he was probably really crazy in other ways.
Right.
That I'm sure there were other criticisms, but that's what he was most famous for: is turning tricks to sailors. I mean, let me just say, let's say you're a sailor, you're coming to a
There's
port,
some royal booty.
and the king is that's the kind of story that they're just not going to believe back home, isn't
Right.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I fucked the king.
yeah.
It's better than hanging out with Bill Murray, really. As a
And
story
they're-
goes.
And they're also going to be
Definitely.
like, well, if you fucked the king, it couldn't have been that cheap. Like, it wasn't about the money to him.
But I
Right.
mean, even historically, though, like Jack the Ripper also killed prostitutes in London, where London now prostitution is legal again.
Yeah, but at the time they were cracking down on sex workers.
That's true. If it was
But
legal back
it's-
then, he probably would have settled for like chambermaids.
he still would have probably still killed prostitutes. I mean,
Probably would have
They-
killed fewer of them.
or if he wasn't a royal, he probably would not have gotten away with it. But being that he probably was royal, he would have probably still killed as many as he had, if not more.
or he
Depending.
could have just killed
But
any
I
homeless
think that-
person or, you know.
I think that women in general across the span of time have been victims of misogynistic
Male violence, absolutely.
male violence, and as a subculture, sex workers have been more prone to that. But I don't think that you can say that taking a website away is going to make them more prone to that when they were just as prone to that before these websites existed, and they probably would be just as prone to that after these websites exist. It's kind of like, to me, like you're
Well, if it's
saying
gonna
that
have no impact.
well,
then why
I
are we
think that
passing
it's
this law?
kind of like if you were to say that now that we have Black Lives Matter, that less people are getting killed by cops because more people are aware of the fact that cops are killing Black people. It's like, oh well, now that we're aware that these websites that are protecting prostitutes are taken away, that now less prostitutes are going to be murdered.
Well, there's a difference
It's-
in that it's a physical change. It's that we're going from hotels to the street, or vice versa. So that
But
there
there's
is-
still street prostitutes, though. It's not like they're
there
like,
would be a lot more if it wasn't for Craigslist or whatever. If it
Yeah,
before
I
there was
know,
the
like-
internet, more women were on the street.
I know,
But
like,
there's still,
street level
like-
prostitutes that get a hotel room and stay in that room the whole time, and they're on their internet, and then they order Johns basically, and just make appointments, and they never have to leave that room.
And they're
you know,
still-
it's so much safer.
indoor prostitutes that are still being murdered as well. So I mean, it's
But they wouldn't-
statistically it's something that's going to happen.
Those women, though, but that's what the Deuce was about. The idea that once you if they were in like a doctor's office, if it was that kind of regulation, it would be. I think those serial killers would start being like, I got to start thinking of someone besides hookers to kill. And, they would start killing homeless people. And that would be a giant win. I think we all
in
agree.
in the same way that undocumented immigrants are targeted for robberies, right? Because that they're not going to report. They're not going to report to the police. I mean, like, absolutely, marginalized people are more prone to violence, but like that's a choice that we get to make. And when we're hearing over and over again that this bill is intended to keep children safe, and the population that it's targeting is being very loud right now, like on Twitter. If you go to their websites, like Tits and Sass, like I can't think of a single sex worker organization that is like, thank God we're finally cracking down on like it you ought to listen to the population of people that this
But the
legislation is going to
population
impact.
is really supposed to be helping trafficked people. That's what.
Yes.
That's so.
And
we
most
don't know
anti-trafficking
where
organizations-
these trafficked people are because they are trafficked. So they really can't be the ones talking to us. This is really a population of people being inconvenienced by this, not the actual population
sex worker
that are
project at the-
supposed to be
the
helped by
the sex
it.
worker project of the Urban Justice Center, right? SOAR, Amnesty International, like these are all organizations that help trafficked victims that are against this bill, that they work with people who have been trafficked and addressing their needs and getting them help. And they're saying that this bill is going to impact the population that they serve negatively. And those are trafficked victims. Those are people that have been brought from other countries and lied to, people who've been deeply exploited, people who've been coerced into sex work. And like, and even Amnesty International is against this bill. The ACLU is against this bill.
What is Children of the Night saying about it? Are they
Who are they again?
Children of the Night? They're an advocacy group in LA.
Is that like they help
they-
runaways?
Yeah, they're mostly specifically about keeping children out of prostitution, but the way they do it is by providing housing for runaways.
Right, yeah. So like the best anti-trafficking bills
Right.
are about giving resources to people that need them, right? It's about taking away economic coercion. So like most of the anti-trafficking arguments that I hear are really anti-exploitation under capitalism arguments, which makes all of the sense to me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe that anyone should be doing something that they don't want to be doing. in
More
order to
laws
live.
just make more things illegal and make more criminals.
right.
Actually, I just checked it. Children of the Night is against the bill.
Yeah.
and they are the of the groups that I've had experience like learning about. They're the one that seem to be the ones that are the most respectable. They're the ones
What
who
do
basically
they say this
they-
bill is going to do? Because
I
they're
mean-
going to be experts on trafficking, whereas I'm just an expert on my life, which
Well,
is like
On me.
super privileged. Sex work for funsies. I was more like that emperor than like a survival sex worker for sure.
I'd have to read the entirety of it, but basically, yeah. I mean, Children of the Night, because the reason I learned about Children of the Night was because they were the people who were attacking Ashton Kutcher's child prostitution advocacy group. Because we found out they were the ones who attacked it because his group was raising tons of money, and 100% of the funds they were raising were going right back to raising awareness about their own group.
So they're
all
just
they
raising
did-
money to make commercials.
All they did, the only thing they did with
It's like
any of
the
the money that people
SPCA.
gave them was make more commercials saying, give money to us because we're trying to raise awareness. And we found out
Well,
also
technically,
they were
only
lying
have to
about the
use
numbers.
10% of it.
They lied about the numbers. They didn't use any of it. They used nothing. All their advocacy money was going right back to raising awareness about the problem, which they were using fake statistics about. And Children of the Night said, what we do is make beds for children who are going to be hookers if they have to be homeless. And we're saying the only way you stop children from being prostitutes is to give them a
Give
bed
them
to
a place
sleep
to
in.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea that it was a great thing that Kutcher got in trouble for that because it was such pure masturbation and just trying to make themselves look great by saying all the money should go to making people know that I'm helping even though I'm not helping.
Yep.
That's the only reason I went to them specifically because I was like, they seem like they know what they're talking about because they were actually trying to make less children, because that's by the way, a big part of prostitution. Just a little quick segue. A big reason that children become prostitutes, specifically male prostitutes,
No choice.
is because in this country, because of our homophobia based in religion,
Yep.
young gay
Kicked out of their
boys
house.
get kicked out of their house
Yeah.
and have to have sex with pedophiles to survive.
I'll also say that there's a pretty big chunk of survival sex workers that are running away from one bad situation into another. And so a lot of these kids are choosing to engage in sex work because labor laws prevent them from having, like, the other employment opportunities are taken away from them, and going home is unthinkable for one of infinity reasons.
Yeah.
Right, because
So there's a lot of unintended negative consequences for thinking, wouldn't it be nice if, right? Wouldn't it be nice if nobody got an abortion? Wouldn't it be nice if nobody had to do prostitution? Wouldn't it be nice if people only had the kind of sex that makes me come? I mean, like,
it's really weird how much I cringe hearing you say those words without singing it.
wouldn't it be nice
If
da,
we
da,
weren't
old-
hookers. Old pros.
I just look, it's like as long as it's illegal, we're going to always be splitting hairs about how it should be enforced because if people don't believe it should be illegal at all, you're always going to want to have less crackdown on it.
Right.
And because we all agree that children should be protected, it's just
It seems
We
like
just-
a low blow move to be like, this will help save children
It
based
feels,
on nothing.
because we don't know
It
for sure.
feels,
We don't know
right.
how it's going to be executed, but it feels like this is stop people from smoking pot because of opium addicts.
Right.
Stop people from getting porn because of child porn.
Right. Well, the white.
But I also feel like you have to try it out to see if it's effective or not. And I think that you're going to have a hard sell saying that, oh, well, we don't care if children are being trafficked because I'm worried about my website being taken down.
I don't
it's
think
a little-
anyone's saying that.
I think it's a little beyond that, though, like because you keep on saying that it would just inconvenience prostitutes, and Caitlin is saying that it could endanger and possibly cause the death of
Well,
prostitutes.
let's look at how
Well,
this has played
I-
out in the past.
That's more
right?
than
So
an
this-
inconvenience.
Well, I
this-
disagree
this
with that.
This anti-trafficking rhetoric sounds an awful lot like the white slavery like fears that were running up and down the East Coast during the 19th century, right?
I'm
and
sorry.
so that
I apologize. I don't really think I know what white slavery means.
no,
It's one of those terms that I feel
No
like
one
I've heard many
does? Is
times,
that one
and
of
I
those
don't
things
know
that
what
didn't
the
exist?
I don't know
It's
what
one
white
of those
Like
things that didn't
satanic
exist.
ritual
Does it just
abuse,
mean white people being
white
enslaved?
slavery?
It means the young, innocent girls who, if only they knew better, are lured into a life of sin. And if we just give them more Bible verses, don't raise their wages, that's not the problem. If we just give them better manners.
So when they
then-
said white slavery,
They meant
They
prostitution.
literally meant that
White
the
women in
slaves
prostitution.
are white.
Yes.
because
Yes.
God
It's
forbid.
It's
Is that where the
specifically
word white
for
comes from?
sex.
White
white
slavery?
white female purity was the obsession.
Wait, does it literally mean Caucasian slaves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it
But,
literally means
specifically
Caucasian
for,
slaves.
like sex, though. It's not like
Yes.
an indentured servant. It's
That
like,
is insane.
No, in fact, indentured servants who were frequently turning to prostitution to increase their slave-like wages, were part of the problem.
well, it wasn't slave-like because slaves had no wages, but
Right. Well, but like
Some did.
they weren't.
African slaves in America did not have wages, but a lot of like Rome, you were still a slave because you couldn't choose your job, but there was still a monetary system. They still had.
Or
They
when
were treated a lot
one-
better than African American slaves in America.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
If we're going historically, there were a
Right.
lot of times when slavery was not nearly as horrifying as what we in America think of as what slavery is.
And if you owned one, you could have sex with it whenever you wanted because they weren't quite human,
They
even
weren't
though
people.
Yeah, but that was
they
going to
got
be
paid.
true of your domestic servant who you were paying wages to also, which was one of the problems. Like
Yeah.
when I studied this in college, one of the interesting things that I turned up is that the unintended pregnancy rate for domestic servants was actually higher than that of women that worked in brothels, because women that worked in brothels could trade information with each other about contraception in
Yeah.
a way that isolated domestic servants couldn't, who were also frequently raped by the person that they were working for. So, I mean, it's...
Hey guys, how about instead of trying to arrest people for doing this, we just tell men to stop raping?
Yeah, that's the answer.
Why don't we
We
just
need a
tell?
PSA.
Why don't we just tell men to stop
if
doing
we just
these
tell them
things?
it's bad, it'll stop, right? They just don't know it's bad.
Well, I mean, did you ever
well, now
try
we're gonna
telling
have to
your
go
friends?
into toxic masculinity, and this is going to be a whole nother hour. But we're going to have to wrap
We
this
just don't
up.
have time for toxic masculinity.
We
How
Yeah.
come we never talk about toxic femininity? How is that? I'm
It's called toxic shock syndrome, and it happens when you leave your tampon in too long.
yeah. Let's talk about it.
But before we all go, I just want to give everyone some time to go over their social media, what projects they're working on, where everyone can follow them. Heather, I'll start with you.
Okie dokie. I am Heidi Knights, HeideeNYTES online. Heather Height I do comedy, not as good as my porn. Just, but if you could probably find, I'm performing comedy on Saturday in, I think, the Greenwich Village Comedy Club.
Oh, nice.
But it's not as sexy as, but we just finished our first full-length feature fetish film.
Oh, cool.
Full-length feature fetish film. It'll be on Amazon on demand. You can follow me, Heidi Knights, on everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, and the Instagram thing, HeideeNYTES, and there will be updates, like so many, as soon as it goes live.
Right.
We currently have a Clips for Sale store. The number of the studio I can never remember, but if you go to HeidiKnights.com or Dave's Custom Media.com, it's a new website.
Cool.
You can find links to our Clips for Sale store and we just started doing like full length, meaning like an hour long, just me beating a guy,
Okay.
not off. I mean, with weapons. Like,
All right.
you know. So that's that.
Dude.
Yeah.
Which is way more legal than if you were jerking him off, which feels wrong, right?
Doesn't that feel
I
wrong?
understand. I understand
matter
that the
of
whipping
choice.
was consensual, but like, doesn't it just feel?
I
okay.
can I can leave marks and
Yeah, you drop blood. I mean,
Yeah.
like this. All right.
Okay, Dave Cyrus, Cyrus, Twitter and Instagram. If you Google my name on YouTube, all kinds of things will come up. There's my Brickstone videos, which have millions of hits, as well as lots of other videos that have much less hits, and that I prefer you look at those. Caitlin.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. My parents spelled my name weird. It is Kaytlin.
Oh, God.
I know, right? It's just you can see the trailer trash coming out. Caitlin Bailey, Bailey.
No wonder you're a hooker.
Fuck you. If you care, if you want to hear more about sex worker activism or sex work generally, you can follow our podcast on Twitter. It's Old Pro Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and listen to the podcast. It's the oldest profession. Fellow mouthy whore comic Wendy Starling and I tell a different story from a sex worker in history every week.
Who was invited to be here today?
She is busy.
So you can follow Blamestorming on Twitter at the Blamestorm. You can check out our old shows on our website, theblamestorm.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Marissa Smith. And I am going to be at the Bowery Electric on the 22nd for Women of Color for Progress. It's a fundraiser to raise funds for women of color that are trying to get elected to public office. Mm-hmm. And you will see us soon, you guys.
One thing.
Yeah.
I'll be at the Fairfield Comedy Club on the 16th. But also, I just wanted to say, if anyone is religious and would like to convert me to their religion, I want to start a new segment on this show called Drag Me to Heaven. I will hear you out and argue with you for as long as you'll stay.
Okay. So we are looking for religious people that would like to drag Dave to heaven.
That so makes me wish that Satanists recruited people, because that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know one, I'm willing to hear him out.
Well, we don't do that. I am one, but we don't do
recruit.
that.
No, I mean, one that would be interesting and just
Proselytizing. Yeah.
I wonder if they we don't do
All right,
it?
we're going to wrap
Yeah,
this up,
bye.
you guys. Bye.
Bye.